right, beautiful souls. We are in for a huge treat today. Jennifer Kenney-Smith is with us today. She's one of my absolute favorite humans, and you're about to find out why. I'm going to share with you a little bit more about her so that you can kind of get to know her before we even dig in. So she's an empowerment coach, transformational yoga teacher, and an Ayurvedic practitioner. She specializes in guiding men and women through midlife awakenings. I mean, who can relate? Raise your hand there. I can certainly relate to that. Helping them heal their bodies from the inside out to overcome disorder and disease. She helps her clients break through limiting beliefs, reclaim their self-worth, and connect to their divine purpose through her holistic approach, blending modern and ancient healing practices. She nurtures the mind, body, and spirit and helps her clients do the exact same through this beautiful approach. I mean, you're really digging from both sides of the spectrum and having it all be this immersive experience that allows the person to really heal from the inside out. So Jennifer, I cannot wait to dig in with you today. This is going to be so much fun. And just to give like the listeners a little peek into our relationship, because we're going to be digging in friend to friend, but also just so much of the beauty that you've moved through to get to where you are today. I can't wait to dig in with you today.
Thank you so much. I am so excited.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. So I would love to talk about, there's these midlife awakenings that you mentioned, or even just the spiritual awakenings. I've been through some major ones. I know some of the big ones that you've been through, releasing relationships, releasing jobs that are out of alignment. So take us back to that moment in time where you started having your own awakening, where you noticed things were falling away or things were coming into question or things felt like they were harder than normal. Bring us back to that moment in time and what helped kind of guide you through that awakening? Because it can kind of feel like everything's falling apart when really it's turning right side up. It's starting to rebuild. Bring us back to that moment and how you started to kind of guide yourself out or find the guides that helped you kind of through that experience.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to bring you through what was a pivotal moment that really started the midlife transition. Before I really understood it was an awakening, I was still very much in a victim mentality. Unbeknownst to me, no one would ever witnessed me as victim. I was someone just texted me the other day, "You're a warrior." And that was language I would use on myself, a fighter, a rock star. I sought after external accolades to feel good about myself. And that's where I identify my self-worth. But when life got challenging, things that started to trigger me that ended up being like Jenga, like one thing would pull away and it didn't all fall apart just yet, but then it eventually started to loosen and things started to completely come crashing down. And what I can attribute to now is those were just my midlife crises, my rock bottoms to lead into this midlife awakening, but it didn't look that way at the time. So for those listening, if you're seeing things that feel like symptoms, for example, panic attacks, anxiety, depression, whatever your ailment is, manifesting disorder, I call it. I don't like to use the word disease. I think that puts us in a victim stance again, where we're giving the doctor the allowance to tell us what to do. But the way that we show up seeking validation and dancing with these symptoms until the shit starts to break down and to come to a surrender in it. So that's my wisdom, is I've just learned the more we hold, the more we live in a fear state of, I have to have this identity or fix this thing or make this thing work. For example, my marriage of, we were together 16 years, was not working year one. I left year one. I went back thinking, we think people are going to change and show up in a way that is going to meet what our needs are. Not thinking through, I was in my early 20s, that there's two people involved. I'm like, you need to do these things for me. Anyway, let me bring us to one of the big moments for me. So I'm in my corporate role. I've climbed the corporate ladder. I have finally arrived to the place that I thought was it. This is like 2014, 2015. So almost 10 years ago. And certainly in my late 30s, I wasn't done growing. So life presented an opportunity to say, wake up, beautiful soul. What it looked like was I had a man that I had worked with at a previous company who went to a new startup and asked me, picked me, selected me. Yes, it's my time to be a leader in his organization. I knew the man was not consistently kind to work for or mindful. I didn't have any of this language back then. I wasn't a yogi. I was very much just a workaholic, and fought to get to this role and this entitlement. So I take the job. I'm going to be leading a sales team at a startup company, which is going to be the newest, sexiest technology out there. I am jazzed. I've proven myself. I've built my brand. Finally, like on a silver platter, this is it.
Yeah.
However, we had an altercation. We had exchanged words, we'll call it. What it really looked like was he was unhappy, displeased with a choice I made. My team that I supported, I led a sales team, wasn't getting credit for a certain deal. But it was ours. And so I reported it and said, this is unfair. We want to get credit for this. And he said, well, but the other division needed credit for it, for the company to see both divisions growing. Well, that's not right. I'm a do-gooder. I'm going to fight for the right thing.
Yeah.
So I break glass because I go to his boss, and his boss supported the same decision. No one's supporting this decision on my behalf or my team. That man, the vice president, gets fired. So the new manager comes in, the new vice president says, I have an open door policy. If there's anything you want to do to change, that I should know about changing this organization. And I'm like, first one at the door, an open door policy. Here I am. There's a problem. I want to help you course correct what was done incorrectly.
Yeah.
He goes to my boss. My boss comes to me. This is the moment. So I get invited into his office. The door gets slammed. A desk gets shoved. The pen gets thrown, and he is berating me up and down the insult ladder of how stupid I am. How could I do this? This is insubordination. How dare I could fire you. And as a woman who was so pleased with this role and this experience, I found myself feeling like a little girl where my lip was about to start quivering and the door shut. There's nowhere to go. And you know what the craziest part is in this room, which isn't soundproof, and outside of the room is the cube farm of at least 100 of the team that I either managed or my peers managed. Yeah. So this hurt everything. And what am I going to walk out crying? So we have this facade. We got to keep it all together. We got to be these rock stars and show no emotion, suppress, push it down, do not express, warning, warning, I'm about to cry. So he says, do I have anything to say for myself? And I know if I say anything, I'm going to cry. So all I could say is, are you done? With enough gruffness about, are you done? I'm done. Like, I want to be out of this room. And he's like, I'm done and you can leave, which I didn't know if that meant I'm fired or we're done the conversation. So I quickly walk, shoulders back, trying to not burst out into tears still, because it's like a runway show. All the kids.
Perfect. Great.
Like, what did she do?
Yeah.
In all honesty, I was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Corporate America has numbers. They count beans. They want to have numbers look good for shareholders. So it didn't matter what was the right thing. It matters what reports needed to say. I collect everything from my cube. And one of my peers comes over and he says, are you okay? And I'm like, don't ask and don't hug. Don't come in emotionally.
I can't. Let me get to my damn car.
I just said to him without just enough emotion to get through the moment. Like, I have to go. Leave. And I run to the car and I completely come apart in the car. And what I didn't know then that I now know is that trigger allowed years of unworthiness, of shame, of pain, of not speaking up for myself. I didn't tell him, go F yourself, you're an asshole, or screw you. Literally, there was no grounds for me fired. There's no merit. I ended up having to talk to HR, and it was a whole ordeal. Those listening, the victory is he got fired. I was offered to keep the job and get a promotion, but there was too much baggage to it that I didn't feel like I should stay. Which in hindsight, I didn't really actually work through it in real time. But from this moment, I go to therapy. It was over Thanksgiving break. I didn't know if I was fired yet. I didn't know if I was quitting. I just knew I needed time to address whatever was coming up and out. Therapist says, well, your panic attack, literally had a panic attack of a car. It's coming from your inability to breathe. So the anatomy is the diaphragm has to come down. We're taking a full inhale through the belly. We bring it up to our lungs. And this would be if we are normal, healthy humans or yogis. And we slowly exhale and we feel just a nice receiving of prana, life force energy. All is well in the world. But, wait for Glenda, the good witch, to come out and, give us a little smile. But we don't breathe that way. We have a dysregulated nervous system, all of us, especially post-COVID. We haven't processed all the trauma. We have the short breath from the top 20% of the lungs. We're walking around just minutes away from our own panic attack. So her antidote was, you should go to yoga. And I'm like, for the love of God, I'm not going to yoga. Don't you just have a prescription? Just give me something. What's the actual antidote, the pill, it's all that we're conditioned to. So I don't want to go to yoga because I thought yoga is like laid on the mat and chanted, and I thought that was a complete waste of my time.
Mhm.
My philosophy of eradicating emotions would be to go sprint till I threw up, to
Mhm.
go kickbox also till I threw up. See a pattern here,
Mhm.
because I learned if I abused my body in a way
Mhm.
to make me not feel any pain, I could continue to survive, like unexpressed trauma.
Mhm.
So I took her advice. I needed to get my stuff together to then go have a conversation with HR and decide, am I going to go fight for my job, defend myself literally for the first time in my life? Because I grew up in an alcoholic household, and you don't speak up for yourself. You go to your room, you shut up, or you are presented with a mouth washing out with soap or a belt. Like
Mhm.
there was consequences to speaking our voice in
Mhm.
my household. So I go to yoga, and I think I'm going to chant, I'm going to lay on the mat, and it's going to be a complete waste of time. But what I found is divine intervention. I don't know what power vinyasa flow is, but that was what the schedule said.
Mhm.
And the room is small. It's probably double the size of my office, so not big. Maybe 20 people could fit in there. And the gentleman teaching has some like classic rock on, and I'm kind of like mid. I don't really know if I want a classic rock to laying on this mat. But
Mhm.
sure enough, he has us up pretty quickly. We start moving aggressively through this pattern, this
Mhm.
sequence, and I'm in really great shape physically.
Mhm.
But I have this unexpressed trauma that has started to expose itself like a raw nerve. I mean, those of us who have ever had nerve pain in your spine or like a root canal issue, like
Mhm.
you know what that raw nerve is about to do if it gets disrupted. So
Right.
shit gets real, real fast. We're moving faster. The room is hot. And I'm in down dog at one point, and I'm like, F it. I'm going to either puke or I need to leave. I'm not going to puke in the room in front of people. I only do that at boxing, right? Where it's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool to do that.
Right.
But there's legs moving and people are moving so fast, and the door was so far behind me. I thought I can't get to the door, and I couldn't remove myself. And what I realized in the moment is I want to run. And it's
Mhm.
all that I knew was either numbing my pain or running from it, whether it was from relationships or this job. I'm going to just quit. I'd quit jobs before, never really dealt with the core issues, which really had not much to do with the job, had to
Right.
do with my childhood stuff. And I still had no recollection that there was trauma.
Mhm.
We're taught by movies the extreme macro traumas. Like, I remember telling my therapist one time when she asked me to make my abuse chart, and I was like, listen, my father didn't put cigarettes out on me, and my brother didn't try to molest me. Like, I'm good. And
Mhm.
to think back on, like, that was my level of experience of minimizing trauma.
Right.
There was plenty of trauma in my life, and I
Mhm.
never had the ability to acknowledge it, much less process it. It was shut up, go to your room, we don't feel.
Mhm.
So I'm in the yoga room. I end up falling to my knees, and I sink back to child's pose. And there's this little tiny white washcloth towel thing that I got to stuff my face in and started crying.
Mhm.
I am crying. The music, thank God, is loud. It's like Metallica. Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't have to be heard. I am purging and
Mhm.
letting all of this stuff come out. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough in the class. I'm not strong enough. I can't get through it. All of the ways that we abuse ourselves with the language, with the dismissiveness, with the abandonment of our own innate power and strength. Like just being held to four corners of a mat, nowhere to go.
Mhm.
Hello, for the first time in my life, I find me,
Mm.
nowhere to go.
Mm.
So I stayed in that room long enough for the people to clear out. Too much shame for me to show my face. I don't even have language for it. I just know something happened. And I think at part, I was thinking it was the man's fault that made us go through that sequence, but
Mhm.
he
Right.
ended up being a great teacher for me. So I went back every day. I knew something was there. Again, I don't know at the time this opening, this eradicating of the pain, this permission to be witnessed, to be seen, to have an experience, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual all in one, like a
Mhm.
freaking magic carpet ride happening. So
Mhm.
I went every day starting to heal, and I still had no language to it. I just knew the panic attack stopped, the
Mm.
anxiety stopped, the dark hole that I had been in, not just because of the work, but in really unhealthy relationships that I was dabbling in. That same year, I had been separated for about a year and a half. and had never processed my marriage trauma. I had not dealt with, I was told in therapy, you're codependent. I'm like, I'm not an alcoholic. That's the language I thought of codependency. I was absolutely a love addict with an attachment disorder, with addiction or avoidance. My ex-husband and I played that, and then every male relationship I had after that, only knowing that I couldn't be alone.
Mhm.
Codependent textbook. Literally, I start reading the books. I'm like, I mean, do they live in my mind? Like, how do these
Mhm.
people know this?
Yeah.
So yoga was one of the healing modalities that really started this awakening.
Yeah.
That moment in the corporate job was one of my triggers. I
Mhm.
would have associated then he was the cause. He did this to me.
Mm.
And instead, he's now one of my greatest teachers. Not that we're friends or bros. I don't see him. I don't need to. I've healed and cleared it, and I don't need to cross his path because I know, I'm guessing he hasn't done his work, so I don't just want to welcome that. But what
Mhm.
I now know is the understanding that life shows up
Mhm.
in a way for your greatest expansion. And
Mm.
if we resist it, it's harder. If we open to it in this path of yoga, every single sequence, we're opening and then we're contracting and constricting, and then we're practicing opening. We can't stay in constriction.
Mm.
It's going to be the death. There's no prana, there's no life force moving through us. So we need to just baby step and start to open it up. Bring
Mm.
some spaciousness to the body, to the heart, to the mind, some clearing, some cleansing, and then go back to, if it feels a little bit less contracted and restrictive,
Mhm.
see what's there.
Mm.
So that's one of the beginning. And I say with the Jenga block, that was one that just started to loosen up. We have these things all entangled. We don't realize how it might be one or two big traumas from life that haven't been dealt with that are causing all the symptoms. And if we can just loosen up one, we'll
Mhm.
start to see how that one or two really defied the way that we showed up in the persona, in the archetype. In mine was the workaholic, the codependent. I also became a party girl persona, but a lot of that was work and codependency, for sheer survival, and
Mhm.
also complete dissociation from self, all external. No internal self-awareness, higher self, no connection to source or creator or consciousness, just kind of self-soothing, very
Mhm.
selfishly, self-ideology.
Mhm.
Like, I'm good as long as I'm good. F the rest of the world, like survival. That's all that I
Mhm.
knew until
Mhm.
I learned more. And then I started to get deeper and going, that doesn't fit anymore.
Yes.
What newness do I want to try on?
Mm. So powerful. I mean, there's so much here that I resonate with my own story, where it was like, I felt like I was like on the verge of a panic attack every single day at work, where it was like the one thing would happen and it would be like, oh God. But I also was like prided myself on not crying for like X amount of like 2 decades,
Yeah.
It's like I remember crying for the first time in front of like a family member, and they're like when my dog passed away, and but like barely letting the tears kind of drip down my face when he'd asked like, are you okay? Clearly I wasn't. And he's like, this is the first time I've ever seen you cry, and we're family, like I've literally never seen you cry. And I remember being like so proud of that. And now I look back and I'm like, God, that was like so much just trapped emotion that I never let myself feel. And that was one of the biggest catalysts for me. It was the dog passing away, and that, how difficult that was. And then for you, it was like that moment in the office where it's like, whoa, what a catalyst to being like, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
This work atmosphere doesn't work for me. Me, holding all of this together isn't working for me. All of that, where it's like, it just set you on this beautiful journey of finding like, what is it that's going to help me process it. And I'm actually so glad that the person you found was like, let's not do the pill. Let's try something else. And not, nothing against pills, but it's this idea of like how beautiful that it took you on this journey to then say, let me process this in a different way and
Yeah.
better understand it. I think that's so beautiful and so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's an angel, right? Like
Yeah.
these divine interventions, these moments of time when we look back. I mean, him too. I
Mhm.
can't look at him as this demon and this like,
Totally.
assaulter. I did for a long time, and I'm like, wow, he spun it up, man. He spun me so hard that there was nowhere else to run to. And then that yoga teacher, like all in quick succession.
Yes.
So I think when we are ready, and
Mhm.
and if I go back, but even before that, that unhealthy relationship I was in romantically, I remember that causing me the most pain, like
Mhm.
the most pain in my life. I felt so broken. I would say I think you and I talked about this one time. The darkest of poetry I would put in my phone notes.
Yes. Yes.
So morbid and just
Totally.
terrifying to read now, like that poor girl. Like
Resonates.
my heart's been shattered, like it's in a blender, like awful. But it was how I felt.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it wasn't just that unhealthy relationship. It was all the ways I had never moved through heartbreak, fear, scarcity, loneliness, abandonment, like all these big grieving emotions that are worthy to have a time and a place to be in and move through.
Mhm.
So I just call out that that relationship would drop me to my knees. I remember in my old house, literally hands and knees. Again, the cries that would come out of my body sounded, I imagine, like somebody being murdered. And
Totally.
there was this death happening and me crying out and not seeing, a Jesus or the ascended masters come down and scoop me up and love on me. That literally never happened. However, it did in these ways to then be triggered and then supported and then pushed and then held.
Mm.
It doesn't look like the angels showing up in the way that we think from fairy tales.
Mhm.
Are they there? Hell yes. Are they moving you in a way to take you to expansive growth? Hell freaking yes. Are you resisting all the time? Can we open and just see it through the lens of life is always happening for you? You are fully supported and guided in every single way, every moment of every day.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be so hard.
Yeah.
We just have to loosen up some of those pieces and then breathe and be like, okay, I'm not going to die today. And take
Yeah.
another moment to
Yes.
reflect.
Yeah. Yes. So let's talk about spirituality a little bit. You talked about the angels and guides. I mean, that has been a huge catalyst for my own growth too, of kind of being like, okay, there's something else out there. When I dropped to my hands and knees and I need some help, how does that happen? How does that unfold? Like, and so I'm curious, have you had those moments where undoubtedly something came through from an angel or a guide? Because
Yeah.
I think sometimes when we have these examples, it reminds us to ask. I
Yeah.
think it's like our spirit team is right there. They're ready to help, but we've got free will and they cannot intervene until we ask for their help.
I know.
So please, is there anything that comes to mind when you think about like, oh yeah, that's where an angel and guide dropped in and said, surprise, we're still here. We're guiding you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple. A couple that stand out that were really profound is one of these same time frame because I lived in the same older house. I was outside. I love to go out. I used to drink a lot. I don't drink anymore. And I'll just put this disclaimer. When I drink, the level of pain would also manifest really deep and dark. The really dark thoughts came up when I was drinking. So I'd find myself alone. This was also, I was separated from my ex-husband and had my kids part-time. I have them full-time now, but then it was the first time in my life I was ever alone. I had lived with my parents to then live with roommates in college, to then live with my boyfriend who became my husband, to live with him for 16 years, to then be alone for the first time in my entire life in my 30s. And I had no idea who I was.
Mhm.
I had no idea. I was a shell of a human.
Mhm.
I didn't just not know myself, I hated myself.
Mhm.
Not by choice, but by culture, society. We are taught this. It's not innate. We weren't born that way. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
So complete dissociation and avoidance of self, of creator, of God, worthiness. I
Mhm.
don't know this then, but I'm outside on my patio again, crying like to the moon, to God, like, why would you do this to me? And
Mhm.
it was probably over this guy. I'm like, why can't he be mine? Because he was going to be the one that fixed me, right? Like, he's going to solve all my pain. He's going to fill the hole in my soul.
Mhm.
But literally, that's not the antidote either. It's never going to be the person. It's you. You are going to rescue you. And that happens when you are in the frequency of love and acceptance. And that is the part of the perseverance. It all comes through that path of surrender. And then God is always there. And he just unveils himself or she as love and breathes that life back into you when you forget how to breathe or you just don't want to anymore because it's so freaking hard. So I'm standing outside and I'm having this rant and rage with why this is so painful. And I'm in Northern Virginia and there's trees that are fairly new. It's a new property. Maybe they're 3 years old. There's no such thing as evergreens There's no Bruce trees. There's no Douglas fir.
Mhm.
But this gorgeous aroma that stops me in the pain track and the storytelling and the evidence of all the ways I've been hurt. Like I used to live in that frequency of continuing to repeat all the ways life sucked.
Mhm.
This rich smell of like a Christmas fir tree flows all around me. And I stopped and thought, that's new.
Yeah.
And then I thought, it's you.
Mm.
I just got chills. So God shows up to me or guide spirit. I was just listening. There's a gorgeous teacher on sacred geometry who kind of challenged on the ways I think God's shown up to say God is so much bigger than you could ever even express. And if you think for a moment that that is God's movement with you, it's probably your guides who are literally bystanding 24/7, collectively here and assigned to you to support, love you, and give you the tools, the access to this inner connection of love and that frequency of healing, acceptance, connection, whatever, however you want to language it. Because at some point when it's gotten so bad, then you feel like I call it like the hush. It's
Mm.
almost like you'd feel a mother's hand on your back and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not alone. So that fragrance, what I love about that moment is it stopped the pain. It
Mm.
stopped the cry, it stopped the tears. And I just realized there is something more.
Mhm.
It's bigger than I can describe. And if I could have closed my eyes and saw the frequency of it, I imagine it would have been like 1,000 fir trees standing there holding space,
Mm.
reminding me you are not alone.
Yeah.
You are worthy and you are loved.
Mhm.
And what I understand about nature, Dr. Zach Bush teaches this. He says that the way that God can show us his love is through nature, and the way that trees, flowers, plants will move. They have photoreceptors, just like we do. Every organ we have has photoreceptors that we can receive the photosynthesis. So can the plants and the trees. So they can see us. So
Mm.
we step outside and we're on the rant. I'm so alone. This is so hard. And they're like, hey,
Mhm.
girl, I see you. You're so
Mhm.
beautiful. Like wipe those tears. And
Yes.
we see it in like movies and they emulate or they characterize like there is this connectedness. And we know it from nature that below the ground, there's this ecosystem of interconnective communication. Like
Mm.
if there's one tree in their family, they will send all the nutrients to that tree to save its life.
Wow.
And we think they're just a tree.
Mm.
So that was one. And then the other one I'll share because this is a beautiful lesson for people to look for a way to connect to divine. My therapist and I one day were working on improving my relationship. Here's the thing. I've been raised Christian. I then through yoga studied Buddhism, Sufism, Hinduism. Am full on, full faith, Christ consciousness, Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary. I am in those frequencies daily by prayer and calling in and aligning and literally in prayer.
Mhm.
So it's an active relationship because before that, I was in a very selfish relationship, only asking for the prayer when I needed it
Mhm.
and never praising or giving gratitude for the beautiful blessings bestowed into my life all day, every day that are in my world.
Mm.
It was selfish of, I need this, give this to me. And I would call it manifestation
Mhm.
because I also went down the whole spiritual path, which I don't disagree with. I do believe we can manifest, but it was like, I need this, please let me visualize it and bring it to me,
Mhm.
not based on asking for a relationship with the divine. So what my coach and I decided were there was going to be three ways God or spirit guides could show up to tell me I'm not alone. I needed
Mhm.
just a baby step. I didn't need it to be a full-on relationship. I just needed to know there's something bigger out there than me. And what that looked like was I chose the color red, I
Mhm.
chose the heart shape, and I chose the word love.
Mhm.
And literally that afternoon, I went walking. I definitely connect more in nature. And ever since that evergreen smell, I want to be outdoors. I want to smell the gorgeous, refreshing vitality of nature and be witnessed. And then I get to kind of dance with them. And I do believe that they wave to me. And I don't care if you think I'm crazy because they're dancing
I
for
do
you
too.
too.
I do.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
So I go on a walk, and this was summertime. It was not fall. We had not had a freeze. We had not had a changing of the leaves. Here's the thing, the science behind the leaves don't just fall. the hormone in the tree severs the leaf. They actually sever a part of their bodies. The leaf gets severed because if there's a leaf, the tree needs water. And when a freeze comes, they don't want water inside of the tree because the tree will die. So by its own survival and hormone, in the freezing time, it severs its leaf and they fall off. So to tell you it was summertime, there is no severed leaves and there is no changing of trees, but that pathway I walked was covered in a red carpet of red leaves.
Of course. Of course.
So I felt immediately unworthy, an old shame wound that I still struggle and battle with, not daily, but often. It's my usual go-to emotion when things go sideways for me. I drop into shame and have to witness it. And then all the ages that I felt shame and all the times I felt it, and then hold me in those moments and remember who I am. And that was just an experience that helped us become stronger and better and more available for love.
Yeah.
So I fall to my knees in the shame and I pick up the leaves and then I look for all the evidence of how it's impossible. I'm not looking for, oh, thank you, God, you're here. I feel you. And then I softened. I didn't need it to be anything other than that experience. And this has carried through. A few weeks later, I was on a trip and got off of the airplane and a big sign hanging in the airport said love, literally right there for me. Who knows if it's even real or if it was just like AI metaphysically there, hearts on the beach from little stones. I have this stuff all over my house. Sometimes I collect the leaves for a few days, but obviously then they die, but it's everywhere. So pick a word, pick a color, pick a phrase, and invite spirit, guides, consciousness. Don't get hung up on the words, just these beautiful beings of light that are here to guide us and support us and to help us know it doesn't always have to be so hard and that we're never freaking alone and that the play is an open invitation to expand. And then have a moment to tell a friend. Like my son will say, I was out walking and I saw your leaves. My leaves. So he knows they're mine. So he's picking his own. He's 19 now and he's on his own spiritual quest. And he's spiritual in his own right, but he wants a bigger relationship and he's curious and he's craving the mysticism of the quantum field. Let's go. Let's see how they can dazzle us.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Absolutely. It's so good. So I love the idea of asking for signs and then you will receive them. And, it's like, it's so powerful. Just like, I remember asking for the sign bubble gum and just being like, I just need that. I don't know why. It's the first thing that popped in my head. Just send me some bubble gum. And I remember watching, it was like a brand new kids show that someone else had put on. We were at someone's house and they put it on and she's like singing. And then it jumps to the next scene and she's like, do you like bubble gum? Bubble gum, bubble. And she's like, for like, I don't even know, what felt like 5 to maybe 3 hours of just like an overview of like bubble gum. And I'm like, okay, universe, message received, and then to do something about it too. But I really loved too how you were sharing about when those moments of shame come up or whatever it is for whoever it is that's listening, how you guide yourself kind of out of that. I'd love to hear more for the listener that's like, yes, I experienced the shame and how do I get out of it? So you kind of dabbled in like one of the exercises you go back to that version of you and you kind of start to unpack it. For someone who's listening in that's like, what could I do right now to start to understand where this feeling is coming from so I can start to release it?
Yeah.
What would you share with them?
So first, notice what shame feels like. I mean, we've been programmed to not feel it. Shame is the lowest frequency of emotions. It's like 27 hertz. It's literally the worst. And we will do anything to not feel it. So when it comes up, so here's what it looks like for me. I forget to email somebody back, or I forgot to sign a contract, or I'm late to send in my picture for a podcast. Like, it's not a big thing. It's not like I left my kids at the mall kind of big things.
Right. Yeah.
It's little stuff. And what shame feels like to me and the way it manifests in my body is it comes up my neck and it feels a little bit like fire and little prickles. And if I ignore it, it continues to linger throughout the day. And then I get jittery, I get agitated, I get reactive. I
Yeah.
get really kind of mean-spirited. It's defense mechanism covering it up. Push it down, push it down. We don't want to feel shame.
Mhm.
When I notice it now and I can go, oh, what just happened? And sometimes it's so little, I don't know what it was. It's not a big trigger. It's not the big alarm. It's like, oh, I forgot to send that email back.
Mhm.
And then it would feel like, well, that means I'm not a good business leader,
Mm.
or I'm not responsible, or I forgot about them and their feelings weren't valid. Like, start to just hear yourself. If it's impossible to get to roots of the shame, the journal entry is, what is this about? I feel shame. Well, when was the last time I felt shame? And it
Mm.
might take a little while to breathe into your heart to actually open up a portal, but this exercise for me, I could go for 35 pages and list out all the times I felt shame, including like one time I got spanked on the side of Route 95, and I was like 9. I mean, I should
Mhm.
have been out. My dad just reminded me of this, and he's like, "Do you remember?" I'm like, "Of course I remember. I still remember that to this day." Like,
Yeah.
I was closer to an adult than a child, and I think
Yes.
he dropped my pants on the side of the highway. Like,
No,
yay!
Dad, come on.
So we think about these moments that fester, and
Mhm.
if we can see it come up in real time, and how I now can see it more actively is when I'm not drinking again. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying you don't have to drink, but if you numb your shame with alcohol or sugar or the food or the work or the Lord, this is the easiest one. Da, 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 da. It's like a circus show. We just
Um,
scroll and then we
yes.
don't feel anything, but it will come back up
True.
later in the day. You snap at your kids, you snap at your spouse or the dog. I mean, whatever it is, then it's like,
So
wait,
true.
what happened today that I was upset about and I didn't process? So go journal it, but just be with it. And then
Mhm.
the more advanced one is going back to a little inner child work, like what age were you? And then go love on her. These moments in time were probably pretty brutal and pretty awful, and we never had the ability to hone in and remove it, forgive it, shift it, and then love on ourselves. Because the way that shame shows up for me is, like I said, when I was almost fired from that job, it was me at like 10 years old standing there in front of that man, maybe 7, my lip about to quiver.
Mhm.
And I wanted to like cover everything and like run,
Yeah.
sprint out of that, just run. And if I had healed shame in real time before that moment, I would have been able to have a adult conversation with him of, I disagree with this, how this is going. I'm going to go ahead and speak to HR. I feel like we probably need a mediator. This doesn't feel
Mhm.
like a healthy conversation. Like, there could have been a very mature way to handle that instead of me sprinting, crying, melting. However, it was what I needed to start
Mhm.
this midlife awakening.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, such a powerful exercise. Such a good reminder. I love that journaling exercise. I'm going to take that, use that for sure, because I'll do the inner child one, but I love the idea of even journaling, like, where is this coming from? What are the different stages? When was the last one? And then maybe even after writing it, maybe you burn it, setting that intention of being like, and as I burn it, I release all these limiting beliefs, or even like just tearing it up. If you're like, I don't have like a fireproof or like a safe place
Yeah.
to burn it, releasing it, ripping it up, whatever that looks like, setting intentions to just get it out of the body.
It
Yeah.
can be the return to sender also. And that
Absolutely.
mantra, like
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying to have to take accountability for everything. Like, there's things we
Mhm.
need to be accountable for, but if somebody harmed you in a way and you didn't have the tools or the
Mhm.
wherewithal to sit, protect yourself and have the boundaries, these ways of, you hurt me, I was in so much shame because the way you treated me in this situation, and I am returning and rejecting these emotions. They are no longer mine. Because a lot of
Mhm.
that could have been their shame projected onto you, and it was 7 years of generational shame. So we
Mhm.
want to get it out. That's why I love the journaling. I like the burning. I like scribbling and markering through it too, because I used
Totally.
so scared someone to read my journals, like when I was still
Huh?
married.
They're like,
So,
damn, she was in the dark place. I know.
right.
I would be interested to go back in my journals because I keep them. And I would be so interested to go back in those and be like, what was I moving through in 2022? Or what was I moving through in 2017? It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And then sometimes I'm like, wow, that was so profound. Like, who wrote that? And like,
Yeah.
I wrote that. It's crazy.
Yes.
Because when we're
Yeah.
in, the information is just pouring through us. It's not just our own information, it's the expansiveness, it's consciousness.
It's so true. Oh my gosh. Jennifer, you're amazing. I just love you from the depths of my soul. I know that everyone who is tuning in has fallen in love with you too. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you even more?
Oh, thank you so much. And I love you so much. I'm so glad we connected through a mastermind. And I was literally like, I have to know her. She's my sister. And I'm so honored to be with you today. I'm at jksyoga.com. It's my website, www.jksyoga.com, and at jksyoga_coaching on Instagram. And on LinkedIn, it's Jennifer Kenney-Smith. And that's more my business profile. As I work with corporations for leadership and mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. I work more through Instagram one-on-ones and group coaching, and I do transformational retreats as well.
Amazing. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for everything that you were breathing into the space, for all the wisdom, for the exercises, for things we can tangibly do. I'm so grateful. And for everyone who's tuning in, thank you so much for spending your most beautiful and precious resource with us, your time. We are so eternally grateful for you. We are sending you so much light and love. And until next time.